Before we dive into this wild ride, tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? Whether it's a breezy beach house in Florida, a cozy mountain cabin in Colorado, or a buzzing downtown loft in Chicago, I love seeing just how far these Karen tales of chaos and karma can travel. The first time I saw her SUV parked in my garage, I thought maybe I'd lost my mind, or left the door open. Maybe I'd hit the remote by accident. Something. Anything that would explain the absolute absurdity of what I was seeing. A beige mid-sized SUV, chunky and spotless, sat snugly inside the left side of my two-car garage. My garage. The one attached to the house I bought with every cent I had, after 10 years of working late nights, saving on rent, skipping vacations. My name was on the deed. My name was on the utilities. I lived here. And now so did that car. It was 6:17 in the morning. I remember the time exactly because I had coffee in one hand and my keys in the other, ready to drive to the gym before work. The cold air hit my face as I opened the door to the garage, and I stopped mid-step. My breath caught in my throat. The smell of car exhaust still hung in the air, fresh. Then I heard it. Heels clicking on pavement outside. Confident, casual. Like this was her place. She didn't even flinch when she saw me standing there, barefoot, in flannel pajama pants and a hoodie, looking like I'd just seen a ghost. "Oh, you're up early," she said cheerfully, hoisting a grocery bag from the back seat. "Karen?" I asked, my voice flat. She looked over her shoulder and smiled, that kind of grin only people who've never been told no wear comfortably. I just needed to drop a few things at my mom's. Didn't want to block my own driveway while she was having it pressure washed. Hope it's not a problem. And then she walked away. No explanation. No apology. Just turned and marched down the driveway like it was her private sidewalk. I stood there in stunned silence as the morning breeze blew through the half-open garage, whistling like it knew something I didn't. Karen, the head of the HOA. A woman I had only met twice, once at the Welcome Committee barbecue, and again when she slipped a printed violation notice under my door because my trash bins were visible from the street for 3 extra minutes on collection day. That Karen. I didn't move the car. I didn't even leave for the gym. I just stood there for a long time, staring at that beige SUV like it had parked itself there out of spite. It sat in my garage until noon. Later that evening, I saw her at the mailbox. I tried to be polite. "Hey, about the garage." "Oh, right," she cut me off. "Thanks for being so chill about it. You're a gem." I didn't say it was okay, I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. She laughed. "Don't worry, my mom and I won't be long. Her place is right across the street, anyway." She pointed to the house directly diagonal from mine. A modest, white-trimmed ranch with fresh flower beds and a high-end security camera above the door. I'd never seen anyone go in or out, but apparently it belonged to her mother. A frail-looking but fashionably dressed woman I'd occasionally spotted walking a tiny dog in a tailored trench coat, like she was late to a Vogue shoot. "You can't just park in someone else's garage," I said, firmer now. "Oh, I'm sure we'll figure it out," she said, smiling as she turned away. That was the end of it. Until it happened again. The second time, there was no pressure washing. No excuse. Just her SUV, parked neatly in the exact same spot, like it had been there all along. This time, I knocked on her door. Her mother answered. She looked up at me through perfect silver curls, bright eyes behind vintage glasses, and a tailored blouse tucked crisply into navy slacks. Her style reminded me of old Hollywood, or someone who had never sweated a day in her life. "Hello, dear," she said sweetly. "You must be the young man across the street." "Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry to bother you, but is Karen home?" She tilted her head. "She's resting. Rough HOA meeting last night. I really need to talk to her. She's parked in my garage." Again, the older woman blinked slowly. "Is that a problem?" I stared at her. "Yes," I said. "It is." She sighed as if I were a child asking why the sky was blue. She only parked there to drop off some heavy things for me. "I'm 80 years old, and my back isn't what it used to be. I'm sure you understand." "I do," I said, "but that doesn't make it okay." She smiled again, smaller this time. Tighter. "Sometimes it's good to be flexible. Generous." You're young, fit, surely you can make room for two ladies who just need a little help now and then. I left before I said something I'd regret. I figured I'd call the HOA to file a formal complaint. That's when I remembered who ran it. Karen. At the next meeting, I brought it up calmly, respectfully. Just laid out dates, times, photos. Karen listened with a perfectly blank expression. When I finished, she stood up, smiled at everyone, and said, "He offered. Told me he didn't mind at all. Isn't that sweet?" The room laughed. Lightly, but enough to burn. Someone behind me muttered, "What a gentleman." I turned around. Half the room looked bored. The other half looked entertained. And Karen's mother? She sat in the front row, legs crossed, a plate of homemade cookies in her lap, passing them around like she was hosting a tea party. I left the meeting feeling like I'd just been mugged in public. The next day, I changed the code on the garage keypad. 2 days later, it was changed back. I didn't know how. I didn't even know it could be. But somehow, someway, Karen's remote worked again. When I called the manufacturer, they told me certain models could accidentally sync if they were programmed within close proximity. Accidentally, my ass. Now it was happening weekly. Sometimes twice a week. Always her SUV. Always the same smug, nonchalant shrug when I confronted her. Once I left a note on her windshield. "This is not your space." She left one in return. "Neither is the sidewalk where your trash can sat for 12 minutes last Friday." Her mother waved at me every morning. Sometimes she winked. I started documenting everything. Photos, videos, logs. It didn't matter. Karen was a queen on her suburban chessboard, and I was just the new pawn who thought the rules applied equally. Then things got worse. One evening, I came home late from work. Tired, hungry, annoyed. And my driveway was full. Not just her SUV, but a second car too. A vintage sedan I didn't recognize. The garage? Open. Music playing. Voices inside. I stepped in. Karen was dancing in the middle of my garage like it was her personal ballroom. She held a half-full wine glass, her face red and sweaty from laughter. Her mother sat on a folding lawn chair near the back wall, sipping from a thermos and tapping her foot to the beat. They didn't stop when they saw me. They barely even acknowledged me. "What the hell is this?" I asked, voice sharp. Karen twirled. Garage warming. I stood there frozen, heart pounding. "You need to leave. Now." Karen stopped mid-spin and looked at me like I just suggested they sacrifice a goat. Her mother stood up slowly, brushing imaginary dust off her pristine blouse. "I told her not to invite people," she said softly. "But she never listens." Karen groaned. "Relax. It's not like we're breaking anything. You're trespassing. You've been trespassing for weeks." Karen stepped closer, her tone flipping to something colder. "You think this is a real problem? There are bigger issues in this neighborhood, buddy. I suggest you pick your battles." I didn't respond. I just turned and walked out. And as I reached the door, I heard her mother say, "He'll get over it." But I didn't. That was the moment something in me shifted. I realized they weren't going to stop, not because they couldn't, but because they didn't want to. Because they believed they were untouchable. They weren't just entitled. They were daring me to fight back. And I would. Not with yelling. Not with threats. But with something far more permanent. I started with a list. Not an angry rant or a screaming match, just a list. Every day, I added to it. Times Karen parked in my garage. Photos of the SUV entering or leaving. The license plate in different lighting, from different angles. Video clips, time-stamped and stored in a private cloud folder. Even the subtle insults, the cookie baskets from her mom left on my porch like I was some misbehaving grandchild. The sarcastic notes Karen left when I dared to park near the sidewalk line. Looks like someone forgot the HOA handbook. Each piece added weight. And with every new entry, I felt something grow inside me, not just resentment, but resolve. They thought they were invincible. They thought I wouldn't fight back because I was too new, too polite, too soft. So I made a new list. This one had a title, How to Make a Queen Step Off Her Throne. I wasn't going to play their game. I was going to change the board. The first step was boring, strip the garage. I cleared out every tool, bike, and storage bin. Everything that had any value was removed. I scrubbed the floor clean, not just to prepare, but to create the illusion that I cared more about tidiness than revenge. Let her think I was retreating, that I'd given up. I left the garage door half open for 2 days straight, just to tempt her. She took the bait, parked right in, like a dog returning to a favorite patch of carpet. Perfect. That night, after her car left and the garage was empty again, I went shopping. The glue came in industrial tubs, transparent, odorless, and viciously permanent. Designed to bond steel to concrete. Waterproof. Weatherproof. Unforgiving. I bought 2. Back home, I pulled out an old tarp and rolled it across the center of the garage floor. Using gloves and a trowel, I spread the glue in thick, sticky layers underneath. A rectangular patch, wide enough to catch all 4 tires if she pulled in like she always did, straight, centered, with smug confidence. I covered the glue with the tarp, smoothed it out, and sprinkled a little dirt and sawdust on top for realism. Then I waited. The next morning, I mowed the front lawn, taking my time, eyes flicking toward her house every few minutes. At 10:43 a.m., I saw the beige SUV backing out of her mother's driveway. She turned the wheel lazily, one hand on the wheel, sunglasses on, window cracked. She didn't even look around as she crossed the street, aimed at my open garage, and pulled right in like she was home. The tires hit the tarp with a dull smack. The glue beneath pressed upward into the treads, thickening like molasses. Her car rolled to a stop. I watched from behind the hedges, silent, barely breathing. She stepped out, adjusted her sunglasses, and called out toward her mom's place. "Garage is all yours, Mom." I clenched my jaw. She vanished into the house. I waited another 20 minutes, then crossed the lawn and stepped into the garage. The tarp looked undisturbed, but her tires? Locked in place. I crouched beside one and touched the edge of the rubber. The glue had begun to harden, forming a gritty paste around the base. She was stuck, exactly as planned. 10 minutes later, she returned. I was standing in the driveway, arms crossed, expression blank. She stopped, confused for a moment. Then her eyes flicked toward the SUV, and her smile returned. "Oh, come on. You're not still mad, are you?" I said nothing. She moved toward the driver's side, opened the door, slid in, and turned the key. The engine roared to life. She shifted into reverse. The tires screamed. A shriek of rubber tearing against cement echoed down the street. The car rocked but didn't move. Smoke rose in faint curls. She tried again, more gas this time. Same result. Confusion spread across her face. Then frustration. Then panic. She stepped out, stormed around the vehicle, checked each wheel. Her voice rose. "What the hell?" Neighbors began peeking out their windows. Karen pulled out her phone and dialed. 5 minutes later, her mother appeared. Same crisp blouse. Same tailored pants. But now with a worried expression that almost passed for genuine concern. "What's happening?" the older woman asked. Karen pointed furiously. "The car's stuck. He did something." I raised my eyebrows. "You glued my car to the floor," she yelled. "Did I?" I asked. Her mother looked at me. Calm. Analytical. Like she was dissecting the situation behind the scenes. "You're playing with fire, young man," she said softly. I smiled. "No. I'm just tired of being trampled." Karen grabbed her phone again. "I'm calling the police." "Good," I said. "They'll want to see the footage." Her hand froze mid-dial. I pulled out my phone, tapped twice, and played the first clip. Her car entering the garage. Her stepping out. Her walking away. I swiped to another. Her mother, nodding as Karen parked, saying something about he'll get over it. Another swipe. Karen with wine in hand, dancing to her Bluetooth speaker, middle finger in the air as she toasted her imaginary crowd. Her face turned pale. "You've been spying on us?" I didn't answer, but her mother did. "You've been parking where you don't belong." Karen's eyes widened. "You're taking a side?" "I told you to stop," her mother said simply. Karen looked like she'd been slapped. Then came the sirens. A single cruiser pulled up. Officer stepped out, sunglasses on, clipboard in hand. He looked at me, then at Karen, then at the car. Whose vehicle? Karen raised her hand. Do you live here? No, she snapped. But my mother does. Across the street. Then what's it doing in his garage? She let me park here. It's not like I was stealing. The officer looked at me. I have footage, I said. A month's worth. Karen lunged forward. He sabotaged me. This is criminal damage. The officer held up a hand. Ma'am, please calm down. I played the footage again. The officer watched. Said nothing. When it ended, he turned to Karen. Well, this looks like private property. And you parked here repeatedly without permission. Karen's voice cracked. But he trapped me. On his property. With his materials. Which, by the way, is something the civil court might care about. But trespassing's a criminal matter. So unless you want to pursue a civil suit, I suggest you take this up in small claims. Karen looked like she might explode. Her mother, for the first time, looked genuinely tired. Call a tow truck, the officer said. And I suggest you pay for it. Karen was speechless. A few minutes later, the neighborhood gathered. Phones out. Kids pointing and laughing. The beige SUV sat there, wheels glued so thoroughly to the concrete that even the tow operator had to pause and re-evaluate his life. When the truck finally arrived, the tires wouldn't roll. The whole SUV had to be jacked up and dragged out with metal sleds under each wheel, chunks of hardened adhesive tearing off bits of rubber in long, sticky strings. One neighbor whispered, "It's like the car's crying." Karen stood to the side, arms crossed, humiliated. Her mother said nothing. She just stared at me. As the SUV disappeared down the street behind the tow truck, a wet trail of beige gunk and shredded tire fragments marking its path, Karen turned toward the house and screamed. This isn't over. I didn't flinch. The officer left soon after, filing no report, just a note that the parties would handle it civilly. The neighbors slowly returned to their homes, most of them smiling behind their doors. Karen's mom lingered. She walked up the driveway, slow and deliberate. Your move was creative, she said. I had to do something. She nodded. Yes, you did. Then she turned and left. I watched her cross the street and disappear into her home. And just as I was about to turn back inside, I noticed something strange. The garage keypad, Karen's old one, was gone. Ripped clean off the wall. In its place was a small scrap of paper, taped crudely to the frame. One word written in flawless cursive. Checkmate. Karen didn't speak to me for 3 days. Not in passing. Not at her door. Not even when we both stood 10 feet apart, throwing trash into our bins like duelists waiting for a signal. But her silence wasn't peace. It was the kind of quiet that makes dogs bark and birds fly away early. The kind that creeps under your skin and waits. And sure enough, the hammer dropped on a Thursday morning. It started with a letter. An official-looking envelope stuffed into my mailbox. No return address. Inside, a typed notice, formatted like a legal threat, but signed only Karen, with a cheap logo at the top that read Suburban Property Integrity Group. I laughed. Out loud. She had invented her own enforcement agency. The letter accused me of intentional damage to personal property, community disruption, and failure to comply with neighborly standards. I was advised to prepare for legal consequences and financial restitution. For a moment, I considered tearing it in half and moving on. But then I imagined her sitting at her kitchen table, printing this out, maybe sipping wine while her mother proofread it, both of them giggling like teenage bullies. No, this wasn't over. I had expected revenge, but not this kind of petty, amateur-hour move. I needed to stay one step ahead, not just win, but end this in a way that left no door open for a sequel. I compiled everything. A detailed timeline, video logs, screenshots of Karen parking in the garage, still frames of her mother shrugging like this was some sitcom misunderstanding. I hired a lawyer, not a flashy one, but sharp and exacting. He looked at the material for all of 10 minutes before smirking. This is a lawsuit waiting to backfire, he said. If she sues, she's digging her own grave. A week later, I received a formal summons. Karen had filed in small claims court. The hearing date, 2 weeks out. And just like that, The suburban game had shifted from glue and garbage bins to suits and courtrooms. The day of the hearing arrived like a storm on the horizon, inevitable and humming with tension. I wore a simple navy suit. Karen showed up in a floral blouse that strained across her arms, heels too high, and a folder stuffed with what I assumed were screenshots of my supposed sabotage. Her mother sat quietly behind her in the gallery, wearing an elegant ivory coat, legs crossed, eyes unreadable behind dark sunglasses. Like some retired matriarch watching her favorite drama unfold live. The judge, a lean, sharp-eyed woman with a tone that could crack marble, called us up. Karen began. She spoke quickly, dramatically, her voice rising and falling in theatrical arcs. She described emotional trauma, vehicular cruelty, and community betrayal. She pointed at me several times, claiming I waged a war against two elderly women who had done nothing wrong. The judge's brow arched slightly. When she finally finished, she handed over a printed stack of color photos, each one with red arrows and underlines that looked like they'd been made on PowerPoint. The judge turned to me. I didn't speak much, just submitted the footage, the log, the HOA reports, the emails, the clips of Karen hosting an impromptu party in my garage, her flipping off the camera, her SUV being towed with part of my driveway still stuck to the tires. The room was silent when the last clip played, Karen trying to reverse while smoke hissed out from beneath the car. The judge removed her glasses. "Ms. Karen," she said, her voice bone dry, "you parked on this man's property multiple times, without permission. You hosted a social event inside his garage, again without permission, and you accuse him of sabotage." Karen opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "You are lucky," the judge continued, "that this is small claims. Otherwise, I might be reading you your rights." Karen's face flushed a blotchy crimson. She turned to her mother as if expecting backup, but the older woman just sat there, unmoved. The judge looked at me. "You're within your rights to seek damages as well." I nodded. "I don't want money, just peace." There was a long pause. Then, case dismissed, with prejudice. Karen stormed out of the courtroom before the judge even finished her sentence. Her mother followed slowly, pausing just long enough beside me to whisper, "You could have buried her." I didn't respond, because the truth was, I already had. After the ruling, things changed quickly. The HOA board, suddenly realizing their emperor had no clothes, called an emergency meeting. Karen was suspended as president pending conduct review. 2 weeks later, she officially resigned. I never saw her SUV again. Rumor had it she traded it in. Apparently, the glue damage had never fully come out of the undercarriage, and she couldn't stand the reminders. Her mother stayed in the neighborhood for another month. She never spoke to me again. But one morning, I found a note tucked under my doormat. Cream-colored stationery. No envelope. It read, "Thank you. Maybe now she'll finally grow up. I'm going to stay with my sister in Maine. You've earned your quiet." And that, strangely, meant more than any court ruling. With Karen gone, the neighborhood bloomed. Literally. Lawns got greener. Driveways clearer. The HOA meetings became normal, boring even. People waved more often. Dogs barked less. Someone started a community garden. I hosted a barbecue. A real one. Nothing passive-aggressive. Just meat, music, and neighbors. Half the cul-de-sac showed up. A few brought wine. One older guy even brought a karaoke machine. I stood at the grill, flipping burgers, watching people laugh where once they had muttered inside-eyed. Kids ran through sprinklers. A little boy drew with chalk in the spot where Karen's SUV used to drip glue. That night, after the party, I walked out to the driveway alone. The summer air buzzed softly with cicadas. Somewhere a lawn sprinkler clicked into motion. My garage door sat wide open, the floor clean, smooth, unoccupied. For the first time in months, it didn't feel like a battleground. It felt like mine. I sipped from a cold beer and sat on the tailgate of my truck. Out of habit, my eyes scanned the pavement. And then I saw it, near the edge of the driveway, almost invisible unless the light hit it just right. A thin, dry trail of hardened beige glue. like a scar left behind by something that used to hurt. I bent down, ran my finger over it. Rough, unmoving, permanent. I smiled. Because sometimes, it's not the battles you win that matter most. It's the ones you never have to fight again.